Greetings, peoples. Welcome. Sure, wait for some people to get in. We'll get started shortly. Make sure I got everything over here. And we will get started in a minute or two. Peace, Brother Duma. Just going to wait a minute or two just to get some people up in here. Did post a notification, not sure, earlier today because I knew I'd come on at this time. Not sure if everybody got it because that shit been acting funny. I get different feedback from different people. But we'll go into it in a minute. You see the topic, which is kind of gonna piggyback off of what we did last night. Was gonna do a live stream after the ritual last night, but that just didn't pan out. So figured I'd continue to touch on this topic. All right, peace, Brother Jack. Glad Brother Jackson here because he was there last night. So I'm sure he could add to it. Brother Adler shows up, who you know in the chat room is AP. He was there last night too. If he does show up, I'd like to get him to share his feedback. Sister Sonia was there. We'll see if she shows up this evening. I think she will at some point. And we'll go ahead and get into that shortly. Just gonna wait another minute or two. So I don't have to repeat myself on certain things. And then we're going to kind of touch on it. What the ninth gate is, the connection with Anubis. We're actually going to touch, there's 12 gates, but why the ninth gate? We'll kind of touch on that in a minute. Again, so I don't have to repeat myself. All right, but real quick, couple quick announcements while we're waiting for a few more people to come in, and I'll repeat it later. I did send out the information for the classes. I did email people. I believe I got everybody that emailed me. If by chance you did email me and I did not email you with the information for the classes, just go ahead and shoot me another email. The information is done. I did email everybody I had on my list. That I'm pretty sure I covered everybody, but if I did forget somebody, just send me an email. I emailed everybody out the curriculum. The classes will start on July 7th and they'll run to August 4th. I emailed the curriculum, the cost of the class, and method of payment. So all that information was sent out. So if by chance, because I remember a few weeks back, I told people to send me an email if you were interested in the online class and you wanted me to forward you the information. I believe I got everybody on the list. And I think I did for the most part. Again, if I forgot somebody, just send me an email. It wasn't intentional. If you do want the information, just send me an email and I will send you the information for the class. So it is finished. I know some people have been emailing me the last 2 weeks asking for it. It is done, and I did send it out earlier. A couple hours ago, I think I sent it out. I did get a response back from a couple of people already. So, again, if you did not get the email and you did send me an email earlier, several weeks back, requesting it, just send me another email, and I will get you the information for the classes. Again, they will run from July 7th to August 4th. I was going to start the last week of June, but it didn't make no sense with the holiday week coming after that. Even though I don't celebrate the holidays, but, it's time off, vacation, things of that nature. So I figured we started right after that. That information went out. And in the email, again, is the curriculum that we will be covering in that 5-week period. We will do it over Google Hangouts, as I said. So basically, once you register, you get your invite. We'll all be able to video and see and speak and dialogue with each other in kind of like a class setting, where we'll be able to see each other, and there will be some demonstrations where you'll be able to visually see certain things when we get to certain aspects of the curriculum. All right. So anyway, you can hit us up for that information. Consultations too. You could also email me at khnum19@gmail.com. Just give me 48 hours. You guys pretty much know how that works. Lasts up until an hour. That cost of that is $52. And that lasts up until an hour. And that also can be done on Google Hangouts or Skype if you can't get to me face to face. We can do that. All right. And again, I put the email on the description box now of the title on the classes, so you can see that for yourself. All right. And again, khnum19@gmail.com. And if you didn't get the information on the classes, I'll email it to you. That is finished with the full curriculum and everything. I did get it out. So just let me know if you didn't get it. Shoot me another email and I'll get it out to you. All right. So let's cover, kind of piggyback off of what we did last night. The best way I could describe it, kind of the whole, starting with how the day began. It's been kind of wet, rainy here, kind of not a gloomy, bad energy in a bad way, but it was just that kind of day. Kind of the tone was set for the day from jump yesterday. We had created a nice chamber room. It was in a more confined setting than where we've done rituals in the past. We had a smaller group, which I actually liked better and preferred because it was more intimate. And, the energy was right, because these type of rituals, they only attract certain people. And the bottom line is, as I said a while back, certain people will fall off when it comes to group ritual work. And the reason why I say that is the type of rituals, when you're doing like what we did last night, for an example, when you're dealing solely with the mental aspect of things, that's where people start to struggle, when they really got to go within themselves and they really got to understand what they're about and do work. Where there's no really external things that they could, cling on to and grasp onto for comfort. What I mean by that is, when we've done a lot of rituals in the past, dealing with the Igun and the ancestors, when there's been a lot of drumming and things of that nature, people are comfortable with that. We've gotten large turnouts for that. It was all done for a certain reason, because the power of the Black Adept lies within. It's not external. And as I said a million times before, to demonstrate and show and prove your power and wisdom as a Black Adept, that's by your works and your results. Last night, the opening of the 9th gate, which I want to talk about, and Anubis and the connection. What is all that? What does it represent? Because remember, it was a ritual to illuminate the Ka and the Ba of the Agatha demon of the individual. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is revisit the Agatha demon. We're not going to get it too in depth on it, but we're going to touch bases on it. But first, I want to start with the gates. Let's talk about the gates. There's actually 12 gates. Why did we deal with the 9th? And what's the connection with the 9th gate and Anubis? And how does that all link in? Well, let's first start with some breakdown and understanding on who and what Anubis is. I'm actually going to refer to 2 books. The first one, I mentioned this book a while back. I don't know if, I got to put on my old man glasses. I mentioned this book a while back. If you don't have this book, it's a book that it's came out a while ago. You can get it if you go on Amazon. They do have used copies of it. This book came out, I believe, first printing was 86. No, I'm sorry. First printing was 45. Second printing was 86. That was the last printing. Oh no, and they did a reprint in 87. But the original printing of this, the author's name is George Hart. 1945 was the first printing of the book. And then they did a second and third in 86 and 87. All right. It's called the Dictionary of Egyptian Gods and Goddesses by George Hart. Why this is a good book is because it doesn't really sugarcoat anything. A lot of the shit that comes out now, to me, is like fluffy. It's kind of indoctrinated because you got a lot of so-called religious people, Christians, etc., and so-called theologists writing books on Egypt, but they're coming from a Christian perspective. George Hart, who is British, okay, English, I can't remember, but I know he's from somewhere over there. He is a archaeologist, and I found out a lot of those archaeologists during that time frame, they were not religious by nature, and they tended to just kind of report their findings as they found them and didn't put their personal influence if they had a personal spiritual belief, etc. So that's why I don't really care for a lot of the new shit. And I got a lot of the new shit too, but I just find it watered down too much. But anyway, so we're gonna go into this book. We're gonna go into Anubis and then the gate deities of the underworld. We'll go through the 12 gates briefly. And then we'll focus on the 9 gates, because when you get to the 9 is the key. That's the activation of the Ka and the Ba. And there's 2 deities that represent that 9th gate. And it's not a coincidence that them 2 deities represent that 9th gate and how that ties and reflects within you and how it deals with you. That's what the ritual was about last night. And then we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to start. If you do have the book, we're going to go to page 21, and we're going to start with the section Anubis. Anubis is the canine god of cemeteries and embalming. His most usual form is that of a crouching desert dog, ears pricked up and tail hanging, wearing a collar of magical force and supporting the flagellum of Osir or Osiris from the center of his body. We know that connection comes from the opening of the mouth ceremony. You have both of them there present. The Anubis dog is probably the jackal and is thus referred to under the name Sab in early texts. But other dogs, e.g. the rust-colored pariah, could have been prototypes. Anubis is perhaps a quintessence of these desert hounds. Certainly the black coat of Anubis is not true to nature, but symbolic. It represents the discoloration of the corpse after its treatment in natron and the smearing of the wrappings with a resinous substance during mummification. This leads on to the idea of rebirth and the afterlife, and that's the key we want to focus on. When we say afterlife, it's also symbolic of rebirth, a spiritual rebirth, a regeneration, a renewal. And as I said before, Anubis bridges that gap from this realm to your connection with that realm, which we're going to touch a little bit on and what that ritual dealt with. All right. Then it goes on to say, also black suggests fertility to the Egyptian mind because it is the color of the Nile, silt which produced rich harvests. Hence, the notion of springing to life after bodily death is inherent in the dark fur of Anubis. Anubis can appear as anthropomorphic up to his shoulders. Remember, we talked about that last week, with the jackal head then superimposed. Very rarely indeed, as in a chapel in the temple of Ramses II at Abydos, is Anubis totally human in shape. All right, then it goes on to say, let me skip down here. One Egyptian papyrus derives Anubis' name from the verb putrefied, linking him with the decomposition of the corpse. However, whatever the etymology of his name, Anubis' power probably originated from the observation of desert dogs scavenging bodies in the shallow graves of the late pre-dynastic period. To prevent such dismemberment, Anubis, in his canine manifestation, was taken as a protector. In the Pyramid era, Anubis is closely allied to the monarch who is described as having Atum's body, but the face of Anubis. Okay. This connection with royalty perhaps led to the attempt to link Anubis's name with the similar word for prince. When the king joins the sun god in the afterlife, he takes Anubis with him on his neck, presumably the image being similar to that of Horus, protecting the head of Khafre on the diorite statue in Cairo Museum. Further, the king enters this pyramid like Anubis on his belly, meaning in the crouching posture of Anubis. That's when you see that image. You'll see it in front of temples sometimes. You'll see Anubis laying on all fours, flat on his belly, right? Then it goes on to say, where would we leave off here? Down here. Okay, on his belly, meaning in the crouching posture of Anubis, a vivid word picture of the agility required by the monarch to negotiate some of the narrower corridors in the pyramid. From the Palermo stone, a fragment of royal annals carved in Old Kingdom, we learn the statues called births of Anubis were used to designate the year in which they were ceremonially dedicated. The nature of Anubis is best revealed by the epithets alongside his name. Then it's going to go into different titles you'll see that precede the name of Anubis, and you'll find that in certain texts. I'm going to stop there for a second, and I'm going to skip up. We'll go through some of the names real quick. The first one you might see in certain text is Kenti Imentu. This describes Anubis as foremost of the Westerners, indicating his leadership over those buried in the cemeteries of Egypt, the majority of which were on the west bank of the Nile, where the sun god sank into the underworld at night. Anubis is pictured in one text as burying the deceased in a sturdy mound of sand in the west. That's one name. Second one you see is Kenti Se Nechtir. Here, Anubis is the one presiding over the god's pavilion. The wooden effigy of Anubis, found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, represents the god crouching on a shrine or pavilion, gilded and decorated with amuletic signs. Symbolically, the pavilion can be both the tent where the ritual of embalmment is carried out and the secure burial chamber, which in this case of royalty was the Golden Hall, where a series of gilded wooden shrines encased the sarcophagus. The structure for embalming is also known as Per Wabet, or House of Purification. It was a special one of these which Anubis, with assistance from Tahuti, constructed for the god Usir, or Osiris, right? Third one, Tepi Juef. This means Anubis who is upon his mountain. The imagery is that of the god watching from the heights of the desert cliffs overlooking the cemeteries. And that deals with protector or watcher of the dead. When you do some rituals in black magic with crossroad deities, for an example, that would be the aspect or the invocation of the name of Anubis you would invoke or call upon. And remember, we were building on, I believe it was one of the videos last week, just like in the Ifa tradition, it's the same thing. The Orishis have different paths. There's a reason for that. There's not one particular aspect of them that they embody. They embody different paths that represent different energies that you're able to tap into in your psyche. That would be the Anubis. If you were doing work at the cemetery or ritualistic work at the cemetery, that would be the Anubis you would want to invoke. The fourth one, Nebta Jezur, Lord of the Sacred Land, referring to the desert in which the necropolis were situated. Like the previous title, this emphasizes the geographical environment in which Anubis moves as god of burials. There is a title in the pyramid text, Jackal, Ruler of Bows, which amplifies this aspect of Anubis as a necropolis guardian. Same thing, you could work with this aspect of Anubis if you're doing ritualistic work at the cemetery. Since it is the forerunner of the motif on the seal used on the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings at Thebes, consisting of recumbent jackal over 9 bows. There's that number 9 again. And that's why we're going to focus in a minute when we go to the gates, the 9th gate. And we're going to talk about, there's 12 gates when you deal with the deities in the underworld, which we're going to get into in a minute. And then it's going to talk about that those 2 deities that we're going to focus on real briefly on that ninth gate, that guard that ninth gate. All right. Historically, these bows signify enemies of the pharaoh in the Middle East and Nubia, which he has subdued. Here they seem to indicate Anubis's triumph over hostile underworld forces. All right. The fifth one, this is a complicated one. Well, not complicated in the sense that it's not understandable. It's a little bit more in depth. And I'm gonna finish it. This is the last one. It's let me go through the meat of it, and this will finish it off. All right. You probably heard this as Imuit, sometimes spelled I-M-I-U-T, or sometimes spelled I-M-Y-U-T. You'll see it both ways. This epithet stresses Anubis's role. This is probably the most familiar aspect that we see of Anubis, whether it's in pictographs, illustrations, things carved on the walls inside the pyramids. This is probably the most familiar form of Anubis that we're familiar with, that we see on a regular basis. All right. This epithet stresses Anubis' role in mummification by calling him, I'm kind of going to go through this a little bit quick, he who is in place of embalming. His association with embalming is recognized in the Pyramid Age, where the putrefaction of the king's flesh is prevented in the name of Anubis. Archaeological evidence shows this evisceration was part of the royal mummification process from at least the beginning of the 4th dynasty. All right. And the Cairo Museum has the jars containing the residue of the internal organs of Queen Hetepheres, mother of Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid at Giza. Anubis washes the royal entrails just as he guards the chest containing the viscera of Osiris. Crouching Anubis can be seen surmounting the chest, dragged on a sledge to a tomb in many burial scenes. Anubis physically embalms the body of the king, purifying it with an ungugent from the 8 Nemset jars and the 8 Abbot jars. It is Anubis who brings the Chekinu oil to anoint the body of Usir. He makes the savor of corpses sweet with incense and wraps them with linen bandages made by the goddess Tayet. In the Book of Caverns, found in some tombs in the Valley of the Kings, Re instructs Anubis to bind the head of the monarch to prevent its loss and to mold linen strips to the face, thus halting decomposition and preserving the features. In an address to the ferrymen of the celestial waters, the bulwark of the boat is called the tresses of Isis or Aset, attached by Anubis using his skill as an embalmer, phraseology which anticipates some of the techniques used for thickening the hair on mummies of royal ladies in the New Kingdom. Anubis has a special emblem symbolizing his role as an embalmer. It is a headless animal skin, occasionally clearly feline, which that's interesting. We'll talk about that. Sometimes dripping blood tied to a pole. This emblem can also be jackal-headed, as in the Litany of Re, describing the sun god's journey through the underworld. Anubis' presence in the funerary ceremony of the opening of the mouth performed on the mummy and the statues of the deceased in order to vivify them in their tomb is symbolized by a priest wearing a jackal mask. Now, this is also where, even in the Christian traditions, right, there's nowhere in their Bible, there's nowhere in there, any book from Genesis to Revelations, where it states to wear black at a funeral. That tradition of wearing black at funerals is really, whether they're conscious of it or not, they're connecting with Anubis, the black Egyptian jackal dog of the dead. That's why people wear black to funerals, and they don't even understand why they wear black to funerals. It's a tradition that's been going on for a long time and does not have its origin in Christianity or the Bible. And they can't even explain it when you ask them, because it's nowhere in the Bible. Okay. Then it goes on to say, as we come down here, where did we leave off here? Anubis originally provided from the sky for the magical as required in this ritual. Anubis' protection extends to the tomb chapel as well as to the burial chamber. All right. Now I'm just going to skip down here. I'm not going to get into all that. We're going to finish with the last parts. Okay. Let's see. Oh, 1 sec. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay. All right. And then the last section here. And then we're gonna go into the gates. In the underworld, Anubis appears in the vignettes in the Book of the Dead, in the Hall of the Two Truths, where the weighing of the heart ceremony takes place. This is what we're all mostly familiar with, this aspect. He stands by the scales, sometimes adjusting the plumb of the balance, and is described as he who counts the hearts. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the 9 gates real quick, the 12 gates. All right. And we're not going to read through them. We're just going to go through the brief deity at each gate. The first one, Seer, right? Hold on. What the hell happened here? All right. Hold on 1 second. I have a little technical difficulty here. Just bear with me. All right, so the gates real quick. Seer, the first gate, okay, is the snake called to open the gate, the sun god under the form Atum. Just going to give you the short version. 2, the guardian guard, swallower of the sinners beyond the pylon of the lake of fire. That's the second gate. 3, the serpent is called Stinger, and the gate itself called Mistress of Food. Beyond its jackals guard the lake of life, forbidding access to the underworld, its inhabitants there, because the god Ray breathes or exists there, right? Again, here I'm gonna go through the short versions. 4, here there are guards carrying treasuring cords for fields in the underworld, paralleling scenes found in courtier tombs. Also, the Egyptian notion of the races of mankind is symbolized by illustrating 4 groups of figures representing the cattle of Re. 5th gate is called the Lady of Duration. I'm just going to go through them. I want to get to the 9th. The 6th gate is Re in his boat as it approaches 7 jackal-headed poles with 2 enemies tied to each one ready for beheading. The 7th gate is called the Shining One, and beyond it 12 gods hold a rope from which emanate 4 whips, 4 hawk heads, and 4 human heads. All right. The 8th gate, here exists a fire-breathing snake who burns up the enemies of Usir. The 9th gate, on the back of a hawk-headed lion stands Horus and Set. Let's stop there right now. That's I kind of went through it quick because I wanted to get through that because I don't want to just keep reading. The shit will kind of get redundant. The 9th gate represents Heru and Set. That represents the internal war that goes on between us on a regular basis, right? We're taught falsely, as we've gone over a multitude of times here on the show, that, you know, Set always represented negativity and evil, and Horus was always portrayed, you know, as, you know, the do-gooder, positivity, that savior figure, which is true to an extent. The slaying of Set, destroying Horus, is a representation of what goes on inside the Black Adept on a daily basis. You trying to overcome your lower self, your weaker self. At the 9th gate, why Set and Heru stand there simultaneously, and why the ritual we did last night with activating the 9th gate is, as you get to that 9th gate, you face that reality. You face the reality that, look, you understand they're both representations of all of these energies that work within you, and we don't look at it. You understand? we don't look at it in the sense that one is bad and one is good. We look at it in the sense they both, one, come from the same source. But that battle that you face on a daily basis, exercising your will in any type of decision that you must make, whether it's something basic or something complex, that activation of the Ka Ba is by way of those two deities on that ninth gate. Now, by invoking them, and again, what we did last night, by invoking them, we activate that realization. And what comes to the surface, as we said before, Anubis being that bridge, he's that bridge that connects that gap between, even though you were getting a lot of symbolicisms in what we were just going through. Excuse me. Even though you get a lot of that symbolicism that we just read through, that illumination or that activation, what comes to the surface is the realization of everything that you're dealing with when we do that invocation. And that happened last night for those that were there. Things maybe you might have been suppressing, things you know, when we talk about things that you're not dealing with on the surface, things that you may not realize are affecting you, you understand? Or you think aren't affecting you on such a deeper internal level, you realize that comes to the surface. So Anubis brings the unseen to your awareness. And when I say the unseen, that's just a term for things that you just might not be conscious of. You understand? So you have to, I mean, it's different for everybody. It's not exactly the same for everybody. Everybody's experience, you know, as I said before, is unique, and that it's different for everybody. Set and Heru standard. We talked about that double-headed figure that you'll see on some of the hieroglyphs that you will see of Set and Heru. You'll see the face of Set, you'll see the face of Heru, and you'll see it connected to one body. That's what's the representation at the ninth gate. You understand? And again, what that represents is the struggles that you deal with within yourself. Set, religious people who don't really understand what Set represents, and in a lot of these Kemetic circles, as I said before, a lot of these people are still religious because they're still here focusing on, you know, Heru, you know, connecting it to this Jesus bullshit. And that shit really is irrelevant. It's irrelevant in the sense that if we're still focusing, right? We talk about how a lot of people still have the influence of religion suppressed on their mind because they approach even the Egyptian pantheon. They approach the Ifa pantheon, which I've seen it. Santeria is a whole different story, which is watered down Ifa, but they still approach it from a religious mentality. You understand? And this is what holds people back. This is what keeps people limited from understanding. So what tends to happen is they, as we said before, they leave one spiritual system, be it whatever they came from. It could be any of the pre-mentioned, and they come into something else thinking that their mind is completely void of it. And in essence, it's really not. And how you see that is in their approach, the things that they do. Like I say, you still hear people who sit here and say that they're a god or a goddess. Like I said, you still hear these people using terms, the Most High. And the question is, the Most High of what? And where is this Most High? If you say you're a god or a goddess, is this Most High exist outside of you? And how does that differ from somebody that believes in the spook god of the Bible or a spook god of the Quran? It doesn't differ. Anubis brand, I'm just using that as a basic example. Anubis bridges that gap from it'll bring you back down to reality. It'll awaken all of those things within that have been lying dormant. And that's why you see in a lot of those some of the excerpts we just read from that book, a lot of those symbolicisms, opening of the mouth ceremony, there's always that bridge. And then there was the connection with Usir. There's always that connection with the dead and the living, him being the guide to the gates of the underworld. But it's not a coincidence that you got Set and Heru at that ninth gate. Now, remember, this is all symbolic. How does one take this and apply it to their spiritual work? Well, again, as I said before, that varies from individual to individual based on their perception, where they're at in their study, and they can utilize that in any shape, form, or fashion they choose, as long as they adjust it to what they're trying to accomplish. There is no right or wrong way. See, where people get fucked up is they think there's one particular right way. That's what gets people messed up. When you're doing work on this path, remember, when we were talking about vampirism techniques, right? And I always refer to this. What is the most powerful god that a vampire can create? Is the one that's created according to that individual's needs and wants. That's the most powerful god one can create. Not an external god that somebody fictitiously created for you through mythology and folklore, faith and belief, and then gave it their structure and told you had to follow these rules, these laws, these regulations. You got to dress like this. You got to, that shit is all conformist. That's stuff that keeps people under control. And it's the most powerful form of mental slavery and indoctrination. As we said before, the left-hand path, which is just a term, and don't even get caught up in that term, because again, unfortunately, when you hear that term, you get all the negative definitions that come along with it. Because when you see a lot of these groups, as I've said before, that are out here today, calling themselves Satanist groups and satanic churches, that's not real left-hand path. As I said before, a lot of those satanic groups are more religious than Christians are, because some of them, and I've had conversations with many of them, some of them, when you're saying hail Satan, again, I'm confused with that. So are you looking at Satan as a literal deity? I'm saying that to say the way the Christian looks at God of the Bible. You got to explain that, because Satan, when translated, just means adversary, which has its root in the word adverse. So all Satan means is he's an adversary. So what these Satanists spend their whole time doing is presenting a doctrine that's adverse to Christianity. A real left-hand path person don't give a fuck about that, because we know Christianity is a baby religion, and ancient left-hand practices can be traced back to the 4th dynasty of ancient Egypt, to the Pharaoh Unas. So we trace the origin of these spiritual practices during that time period. I'm just saying, if you want a rough historical aspect, okay, that's the difference. You can't get twisted up in that term, but we call it the path of self-mastery, right? You hear that term all the time, self-mastery, okay? When we say self-mastery, the key word in that sentence is self. So we first understand in the 7 principles of Tahuti, right? All is mental, mental is all, right? We also understand all things come from the same source, but they're in varying degrees of vibration and energy. So there is no right or wrong. It's the way somebody perceives it. Now, it could be right or wrong to that person for several reasons. If we're building on some information and I say to such and such, hey man, blah, 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 I'm breaking some stuff down about Anubis or whatever, and they might go, that's not true to me. Now, it may not be the fact that it's not true. It just may not be true to you because you haven't raised yourself up to the realization, which opens the doorway to what is truth. Truth is when an individual raises himself up to the reality of that truth. They can confirm it for self, not because they read it in a book, not because somebody told them, not because they sat in a lecture and somebody gave this emotional lecture that captivated their emotions. That's all nice. But that's what truth is, when you raise yourself up to the reality of it. So when we talk about path of self-mastery, each path is individual to the individual that's on it. It's unique. And we have to get out of this mindset that there's one particular way to do something. What it means is when an individual taps into their subjective realm, as we talk about all the time, they create certain realities on that realm that they bring into the objective, as we said before, that becomes a reality to them. Now, just because it's a reality to them and it may not be a reality to you, doesn't mean it's not true. But what it does mean is no individual should accept another's subjective realm experiences, because that's how religion started. You understand? That's how they enforce faith and belief upon us. You understand? This is how they exercise mental control. And like I said, man, mental slavery is a motherfucker. If I can control the way you think, the way you move, your thought pattern, how you're going to react, it's very easy to systematically keep you in mental slavery. And they do this through religion. They do this through politics. They do this through movies, media, TV. I mean, you name it. They know what they're doing. It's not a coincidence. I mean, shit. All you got to do is look to see what's been going on in the world in the last 10 to 15 years with politics and all these police shootings and how they're trying to captivate, us through our emotions. All right. I'm going to go through the chat in a minute. As you know, I'm just going to finish with the material. Then I'm going to go through the chat. A little bit, and I know there's some people in the chat right now that were at the ritual last night. And again, it was nice. We had a small setting. It was intimate. And, it's hard to kind of describe when you're tapping into certain energy. When we invoke the triad of darkness, I think that's when there was a certain energy that took over the chamber room last night, especially when we invoked Sekhmet, because the power and energy of Sekhmet is very raw. It's very aggressive. Even though Sekhmet, is depicted in human form as a female, but the energy of Sekhmet, as I've said a million times before, is definitely not female in nature, or what we know as female in nature. It's very raw. It's a warrior energy. It's very powerful. It's the best way I can describe it. It's an archetype you can use. As I said before, when people always suggest, what's a good deific mass or archetype I can work with when I'm dealing with obstacles in my life? What can I focus on in my visualizations, my meditations, and ritualistic work? Sekhmet is awesome for that. I mean, I can't, I don't know how else to put it. Sekhmet is probably one of the most powerful you can work with. I mean, we talked about Kali a few weeks back and the similarities between Kali and Sekhmet. Remember, a good visualization tool. You see the image of Sekhmet, or for example, the deific mask, or the icon you'll see is the one where she's carrying the Pekibet knife, the separation knife. You understand? The separation knife, even when you see it with Kali and you see the images of Kali carrying the severed heads and she has the knife, that is symbolic of separation. That is symbolic of the individual separating from being a conformist. What Kali and Sekhmet bring to the surface, right? And Anubis is the bridge to the gap of this. We're going to talk about this real quick. They bring to the reality to the surface. In order for you to evolve and grow spiritually, you must separate from all that conformist shit. You must go into your isolated consciousness and create that path of self-mastery for yourself. Because anytime you see Sekhmet, Kali, and you see Set, that's what they represent, that isolation, that individual that's not a conformist, the individual that doesn't follow anything or anybody. We don't do things on this path just because everybody else is doing them. We do things because they resonate with us. We can connect with it. It's a reality, and it's our own personal truth. So there's this big debate. Now, people will sit here and say, well, truth is truth. What the fuck does that really mean, though? Think about it. Truth is truth. But then the question is, before you say truth is truth, let's establish what is truth. That's a cop-out to just say truth is truth. All right, now, when we get on a basic level, if we're dealing with mathematics, right? All right, I get the basic aspect of it. All right, 1 + 1 is 2. That's a truth, right? We're not talking about that. Where is the fine line when we deal with the spiritual and the physical? Because not all things, like you got so many groups out here, as I said before, you got all these book people out here, right? Now, as I said before, when we make reference to books, they're just to give us an idea. We're not to look at the books as the telltale all, as follow this to the degree. Even when we're doing rituals, if you're reading rituals in books, you should take that ritual, alter and adjust it to suit whatever it is you're doing. You should never, ever do it identically the way it's copied in a book. You understand what I'm saying? Hey, peace, brother Adam. You should always add your personal touch to it, because when you add your own personal touch to it, that's the most powerful energy you can do. That's you exercise. No, the last section I want to get into is your Agatha demon, your personal demon. When you activate your Agatha demon or your personal demon, which is the true essence of you, which is you exercising your true will, right? That's the God in you, right? We have different terms for it. The God in you, it comes also from the Greek word demon, D-A-E-M-O-N, your higher self, right? That's what we mean when we say demon. People get spooked out when they hear that word. And as I said before, that word got ostracized in monotheism. right? Islam, Christianity, and Judaism is when you started hearing the word D-E-M-O-N, right? But let's finish with that, and then we'll take some, we'll go through the chat. We'll have a discussion. I just like to finish the information so we don't have kind of just what I picked out. So let's go the Necro Minion book, okay? As you know, we've been going through lately. I'm going to go to the very beginning on page 88 if you have it. I know some of you have it. If you're following in the digital format, I know the sequence is different, as I said, but I think it's the first chapter, if I'm not mistaken. It's chapter 1 or chapter 2. Hold on, I'll tell you in a second. I know some people have it on digital. Hold on. I think it's chapter 1. Hold on. Chapter 2. It's in chapter 2, and it's page 88. All right, if you have the book, the hard copy, page 88. If you're in the digital, if you got it on Scribd or some form of digital format, I don't know the page number because it's different, but it's in chapter 2. All right, we'll give everybody a quick second to get there. Now, we said the ninth gate and Anubis, which is the illumination of the Kamba of the Agathos demon, which means Anubis is the one that activates your personal demon, right? He's the one that activates the realization mentally to who and what you really are. Last night, I mean, I'm not going to get into personal experiences, but people came to that reality last night. A lot of the stuff that you're dealing with in life bubbles to the surface. The good and bad things about yourself comes to the surface, which gives your true will and nature to manifest and arise, your Agathos demon, to take control, the godship of handling those situations, right? It guides you down the road. It's instinctively, that's the best way I can describe it. Again, everybody's experience is different, so I can only explain it in my experience. Now, there might be some similarities in my experience that some others might have had, but again, as I said several times already, it's not identically the same. But let's read this Agathos demon excerpt real quick. We'll finish up with this. All right, so it says, I decided to create an authentic practice of Egyptian pantheon and ceremonial magic, right? I chose to avoid Hellenic traditions. Oh, no, hold on, it's the wrong section, my bad. This is just, no, it's the next page. Give me a sec. That's the wrong page. I have it over here. Where did I do it? Bear with me. That's the wrong page. Okay, right here. Where did I mark this shit? Give me 1 second, people. Oh. It's time to stretch. A recap, Yankees made the early going, so did Sochi from the dugout, but it's been Mike Trout's night and the Angels' night so far. In the bottom of the 7th, hold on 1 second. I know I had it marked. Lost the page. Okay, I'm sorry. Page 77. My bad. I'm sorry. All right. Brief definition of the Agathos demon. In the Greco-Egyptian, the beneficial spirit, which assumes the form of a serpent, right? That ties into Apep or Apophis. The Greek term they use is Apophis. It's actually Apep. Modern Luciferianism perceives the demon / Agathos demon as the personification of the idealized and deified representation which centers the inherent desire or true will. Okay, I hope you caught that. That's the energy or the aspect of the black adept that they connect within themselves when they're working a black magic ritual. What is a greater black magic ritual? A greater black magic ritual is when somebody is able to go into their subjective realm, right, and enforce their will to change the outcome favorable of a situation for their benefit. Do you understand that? Your true will. Now, that's, again, is going to vary from individual to individual. But your agathodemon, which again is just a terminology, the word demon again just means your higher self, your higher intelligence. It's a Greek term, right? If you look it up, you can look the basic definition up even on Wikipedia. It'll talk about a highly intelligent being or individual. That's it. That's all you're saying when you're saying demon, not demon and devils and possession and all that religious shit that people spook it out with. That's not what it's talking about, right? Then here's where the Ka Naba come in, and that's why the ninth gate, which is called the activation of the Ka Naba of the Black Adept, and Anubis is the bridge to that gap. This is why, right? It goes on to say the demon is the assimilation of the Ba, Ka, and Sekhem, your power, right? During the course of life, initiation in the perception of the mind, along with experience in life shapes, empowers or weakens the agathodemon. The demon may contain many Bas, or personification of specific qualities idolized in the Black Adept, okay? So when you understand that, it removes the spookism, right? Now, again, not to get into, I know, like I said, I know Brother Jack, Brother Adler, who's in the room, and Sister Sonia were at the ritual last night. And I'm sure they could probably type in some of their experiences, what was going on when we started out with obviously, the invocation to the four corners, which invoking the four sons of Heru, that was done first. This is the Hermetic circle. If you can get a visual in your mind, when you're going north, you're going north, south, east, west, it creates what we call a cross or an X. Then we go to the parameters in between the northeast, southeast, southwest, southeast. You invoke the triad of light and darkness in between them. You're actually creating that circle, which is symbolic because in that circle, you're locking in that energy, right? When you're invoking, you're activating those parts of your psyche. You can feel that power, that the invocation or the power of that energy is brought forth by that agathodemon. Because remember, these deific masks or these archetypes represent all these things that exist within your psyche, and you're bringing them to the surface. Anubis is that guide, for lack of a better word, that bridge to that gap. It's like if you need a bridge to cross water, well, Anubis is what you got to use to connect it to. And this is symbolic in the psyche. So these are the things that transpired last night. And everybody had because everybody had different experiences, but there were some similarities connected within those experiences, which is very interesting, in itself. And it just brings to the surface the realization, again, as I said earlier in the beginning of the show, of things that you are aware of and things you are not. And it also makes you aware that there's more things impacting. You might know about some things that are impacting you, specifically traumas or events in your life that have impacted you, whether it be a physical death, it could have been some type of traumatic loss. It could be financially, not just physically. It could be a strenuous situation in your life with family, relationships. I'm just giving quick examples. What that ritual does is it brings to the surface. Sometimes you come to the realization you don't realize the impact that those things have on you. You might have devalued how they affect you. And then it works vice versa. There might be some, greater things that you're taking for granted, some powers that you're not utilizing that exist within yourself. So it kind of works both ways. What Anubis is basically, does, it's that part of you that says, look, all right, I'm going to lay it out for you. This is what's going on. I'm going to put it right there on the table for you. This is what you need to do. Here's the situation. Here's the formula. Now it's up for you to take it and put it into work. Because remember, this is a path look, you can read all the fucking books you want in the world. And I tell people this and shit. And those that know me for 20 plus years know I got a shitload of books, right? The problem is you got people that just read. They don't take any of this information and put it into practice. What good is all this knowledge and information if you can't put it into practice? What do I mean by put it into practice? What good is it if you know all this shit about ancient Egypt, but you can't look? You want to give me the history of Anubis, but you can't tell me how I can invoke the power of Anubis. So that shit's pointless to me. Because, I'll go through excerpts in books just as a focal point. But as we know in this day and age, as I said a million times before, with the internet, social media, information's at our fingertips. We can find all this shit out on our own. What we can find out on our own to an extent, what we can find out in a book is, how do I design my own unique path? How do I go about? I don't want to just read about Anubis. I want to evoke and embody the energy that Anubis represents. I don't want to read about Osiris, Osir, any of these archetypes. How do I invoke them? Because the deific mass, when you get into Heka, or what they call, excuse me, Egyptian magic, this was the power that these gods and goddesses used, and how they were able to tap into their divinity. So the question in this day and time is, how do we go about doing that in 2018? That's the question. Because we're wasting all of our time and energy debating nonsensical bullshit. I don't care. I did that years back. I gave that shit up years ago. I don't care to get into a historical debate. I don't care to argue. Like, you still got Black Hebrew Israelites literally arguing over the Bible, and if people literally in the Bible were real or not. Who gives a shit? That's irrelevant in 2018. Then you got people in the Kemetic circle arguing over all these historical data of who was first, blah, 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 this and that, how great we used to be, blah, blah, blah. It's all, what that does is basically waste our time and waste our energy. Now, if that's your thing, then that's your thing. Power to you. But don't get mad at people who that's not their thing. I, per se, in 2018, know that shit is pointless. And I'm not going to waste my time and energy getting into a back and forth nonsensical debate on stuff that's not, because at the end of the day, it's not going to fix anything you need to fix about yourself. It's not going to help you evolve spiritually and mentally. Yeah, it's some nice information to know, but in essence, how much weight does that really carry in 2018? So what I'm saying, and not to stay on this too long, there's a concentrated effort to keep us distracted, even when it comes to consciousness and spirituality. We think, a lot of people think I hate that term, woke. I'm woke. What the fuck does that mean? I'm woke, right? They think they're conscious. They think they're on this high intellectual spiritual path, when I'm not really seeing that, because I gauge that by the results. So if I see somebody, like I said, I couldn't give a fuck if I see somebody wearing Egyptian attire and they got on a big ass ankh and they're saying Hotep, and you got, your other, your Ifa people, they dressed all Ifa'd out and they saying Alafia and Ashe. That doesn't mean shit to me, because bottom line is, I look at that individual and say, okay, they're all Hotep'd out, cool. But I got to look at their example, not judge them. There's a difference. Are they a living example of the shit that they're talking about? How are they carrying their life? Are they getting results? Or are they just like a normal, regular motherfucker struggling, not getting any results, not doing anything, talking a lot of shit, but not being able to produce any results? That's how we got to gauge in this day and time what's going to work for us. So we got to look at it as two ways. Again, you have to be able to design, and it's okay for us to agree to disagree as mature individuals, because what might work for one person may not work for the other, and that's okay. But see, we have a lot of groups out here that don't. They all think that their way is the right way, and that's it. That's where the problem lies. But anyway, I think that covers the meat of kind of what I wanted to go through. So let's go through. Bear with me here. Let me scroll up. I'm gonna go through. We'll dialogue on some of the questions and comments in the chat. I'm not gonna talk. I'm gonna skip the conversation you guys are having between each other. I'll skip that. I'm not gonna go through that. All right. Okay. All right. Brother Doom, that was earlier. Peace. If I didn't greet you, you came in the room. Love my fro. Peace. Smooth to God. Peace. I greeted Brother Jack. Ismail El Bay. Peace, brother. Yinso Bay. Peace. Sister Sonia. Peace. Black Tower. Chantel. Baffa Marga. I am Shango. What's going on, brother? What's up? Andre Polk. All right, if I missed anybody, Anarchy Zed. If hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm reading it right, I believe I am. Here's a good comment. So let's read some of the comments. Anarchy Zed typed in. This is earlier. Again, I'm going to the top. I'm going to the top of the chat, working my way down. So I think about that a lot, about about how paganism's DNA is still in the system, like it is stuck with Christians. True indeed, and that's so true, because Christians, and it's not to knock, but it's the reality. There's so many pagan traditions in Christianity that they don't want to acknowledge, from the very core of their holidays, which, just even the major holidays they celebrate all have their roots in paganism. You can't even find any of the customs and traditions they use, like Christmas, for an example. You can't find any of this stuff. It's not biblically based. It's not biblically orientated. All that stuff comes from the Celts or the Celts. Even like for an example, that shit they hang above the doors, mistletoe. That's a Druid practice, a Druid tradition. Christmas is encoded in Druidism. And again, there's some good things in Druidism if you study it, especially black magical practices. But when you bring that to their attention, they'll be in denial by it. Then you have those conservative liberal Christians who, keep Christ in Christmas, right? And then they don't really deal with that part of Christmas. Well, here's the other problem. They can't even, the very foundation of their Savior's birth can't even be proven, and they can't even provide documented evidence. Because even when you go into their Bible in the first chapter of Luke, if it says the angel Gabriel came to Mary in the 6th month, right, and she carried the child for 9 months, you do the math. You tell me what month that comes up with. Okay, the paganistic concept of December 25th, again, goes back to the Druids. December 25th is the longest. It's the longest night time of it's the shortest day of the year with the longest nightfall. So they symbolically use the 25th because they say, this sounds nice, but there's no truth to it, that Christ represents that light that comes into the world on the longest day of darkness of the year is the 25th, 4 days after the winter solstice. It's all ties into pagan traditions and customs. I mean, we can go on and on about that, but yes, they're in denial about that shit. You can't see, that's the problem with a religious person that deals with faith and belief only. You can't have an intelligent conversation with them because they got tunnel vision. All they want to do is focus on personal belief. And a belief is just that. It's having trust in things not proven or confirmed. And it's personal. So you can't really argue with belief. It's a waste of time. You understand? And then Anarchy Z also types in, there's no way that Jesus is saying what you do is take a piece of bread, utter prayers. Yeah, all right. And that's true. The whole communion rite in Catholicism, right? Now check this out. That's vampiric in nature because they use a methodology if you're familiar with Catholicism and you read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which I recommend. It's a little bit boring. It's a little mundane, but remember, on this path, we must study and master everything so we're aware. And the hardest thing to do is study shit that's boring. Don't get me wrong. I feel you. If you don't have a Catechism of the Catholic Church, get a copy of it and read through it. The Catechism of the Catholic Church is kind of like what the Book of the Sunnah is to the Orthodox Sunni Muslims. Because in Islam, the Orthodox Sunni Muslims follow the Sunnah more than they do the Quran. The Catholics follow their Sunnah, which is the Catechism, more than they do the Holy Bible. You're going to see most of their traditions, rules, and regulations come out of that Catechism of the Catholic Church. If you were raised Catholic, you're probably familiar with what I'm talking about. If you're not really Catholic, you might have heard of it or may not be too familiar with it. But if you go into the Catechism, they call that whole process of the Catholic Mass, of the offering of the bread and wine, transubstantiation, right? Which is the ritual of enacting the actual bread turning into the body of Christ, right? Pay attention to this shit. You tell me this ain't a form of black magic, going into the subjective realm and creating a concept on the subjective, right? And bringing it into reality on the objective. That's their purpose, right? And then they say the wine in that transubstantiation process is turned into the blood of Jesus, right? And then they want you to what? Partake of that body and bread, right? In symbolicism and essence, The same thing is done in a vampiric mass when you activate your ancestors and your blood lineage. It's not literally drinking the body and blood of the individual. It's absorbing the energy of the individual. That's real feeding, real vampirism. So in essence, now, of course, if you said this to a Catholic, they think you fucking nuts because their only information is what they've been programmed with. Really, in essence, if we look at it now, we go back and we look at a Catholic mass from beginning to end, it's very vampiric in nature. You understand? And yes, the communion rites or the communion prayers, which you can only find in their missal, their Roman missal, that's what the church fathers made up and adapted for the ritual of the mass. Outside of the Lord's Prayer in the 6th chapter of Matthew, which they do recite after communion, most of those prayers can't be found. And that's why I said they're no different than the Sunni Muslims who basically follow the Sunnah and traditions that were written by people like Abu Bukhari. And they really don't even follow the Quran. A lot of those customs, laws, and traditions and all that fuckery they do comes out of the Sunnah. The same thing with the Catholics. When you look at the Catholics, you go, where are you getting all that shit? That shit, I don't see any of that shit in the Bible. That's because it's not. They're basically following the catechism. That's what they follow. That's their Bible. Just because they might read some biblical readings at the mass, this and that. But yeah, you got to look at that shit as a whole, man. It's crazy. And then Anarchy Z goes on to finish with that. But the interpretation of that is turned into like high magic, kind of like Golden Dawn. I agree. Ceremonial magic. I agree. Where they are transforming bread into the flesh of a sacrificed God. And people do that every fucking Sunday. And that's true. And that's kind of just what I was talking about. That's how you have to perceive it. Now, those that are aware and conscious of that will perceive it like that because we know, we've done. But obviously, a spooked out Catholic that's under that mental indoctrination, it's tough. Now, I'm sure we've all known or talked to some of them. I've had some interesting conversations. I've actually, believe it or not, there was a priest back in, I'm going to say 2002, 2003. I met him at a Native American retreat, and he actually did a lot of work with Native Americans, and he went on a lot of retreats. So I had asked him, I've had some interesting conversations. His name was Father Ron. I'll never forget him. Even though I bring that up because even though he was a priest, I say this, a lot of them know that the shit that they follow is a bunch of BS. And it's not true. And he was the one even admitting the thing about Christmas being fictitious as far as the birth date. And one thing that he said to me really struck a chord to me. He said, there's really no historical or archaeological evidence to validate the crucifixion. This is a priest telling me this now in a sidebar conversation back in 2002, 2003. So again, not to get into all that, but long story short to say, believe me, even some of them know. Trust me. All right. All right. Then then Anarchy Z type saying probably had intentions of purifying themselves by connecting to the universe and acknowledging the fact that existence itself is predicated on devouring the flesh of some other being. And that could be. And there is something beautiful about that if you understand the concept of it. Now, it'd be interesting. I don't know when a Catholic goes up, I don't know how in their mind they're perceiving when they're taking the communion. But I can say in a black magic mass or a black mass or a vampiric mass, we know we are devouring the energy of those vampiric forces or energies, those ancestral spirits. That's what the elixir that's in the chalice represents, and the wafer or the bread that we would use in a vampiric mass. Now, you could even take it to higher ceremonial magic, which I don't really consider black magic, let's say Order Templi Orientis and the Gnostic mass, right? They kind of incorporate, in my opinion, from being initiated in that and going through the OTO Lodge, the Gnostic mass to me is a spinoff in between those two aspects, because they take, there's a sexual aspect of it too, but they take the representative of the masculine and feminine energy, and it's really symbolic of when you ingest that, the wine and the bread, they invoke Baphomet also is mentioned in some of the closing supplications. And Baphomet represents that totality, that androgyny, that masculine, feminine energy. They even mention Pan. If you've ever been to a Gnostic mass, and they do have public Gnostic masses you can attend, I would recommend, just for the experience of it, you should find a local OTO lodge near you and attend when they have a public Gnostic mass. And just for the experience of it, just so you can see a lot of the stuff that we're talking about tonight, ritualistically, you'll see it encoded in there. No, it's definitely there. Yeah, and like Anarchy said, I think the Catholic Mass is beautiful. I just don't feel it when I attend. I was born and raised Catholic. And I'll be honest with you, when I was younger and I reflect back, I was always attracted to the ritual of it. I even had, you're going to laugh. People probably laugh when they hear this shit. I remember being a little boy thinking I wanted to be a Catholic priest. I used to love to be an altar server, just put on the role. It was the ritual of it that I was attracted to. As I got older and then really studied the doctrine, I just saw how fucking ridiculous it was. It's like feeding fairy tales to an adult. I just couldn't deal with it as I got older. But yeah, I do agree with that. All right. And that's true. When I was making a comment earlier, Anarchy Z typed in, to each their own path. What works for one may not work for another. And that's true. We have to understand that when dealing with people. And you can't, and what tends to happen with some people, they get upset because people don't see things their way. Because I've talked about this a bunch of times, and y'all heard me talk about this a numerous amount of times. People get upset when they hear things that don't line up with their personal ideology. That's some personal shit you're going to have to get over. I mean, not everybody's going to agree or see things the way you see things. If you're going to waste your time and energy trying to convince somebody that your way is the only right way, man, you're going to have a tough life. I go, well, that's all I can tell you that. That's all I can tell you. Brother Phil, what's going on? He types in Jesus is as fake as Kim Kardashian's ass. I agree. Yeah. And Anarchy Z typed in, bro, your distinctions are proper to evaluate your overall point. So glad I found this channel. Well, we appreciate you listening and supporting. Thanks for tuning in. I Am Shango types in, Jesus is only real as a thought form that's been given lots of energy. Right. And here's the beauty of it. Check that out. I'm glad you bring that up. I Am Shango. Belief. What is true belief? Let's talk about that for a minute. What's the difference between religious belief and personal belief that we might have through imagery and working magic on this path? I use the imagery aspect. All right. Religious belief, as I said a few minutes back, is having trust in things not confirmed or proven. When we create stuff on our subjective realm, in essence, it's a belief, but we give power and life to that belief by bringing it into existence. Because what might be a reality, again, and to us on our subjective, would be a belief to somebody that hasn't, like if they accepted it, that hasn't had that similar experience, right? That's the difference. That's the fine line. Now, the beauty of it is when you hear religious people, right, they say, Jesus saved me, right? Or they say, give praise to God that they got something accomplished. They never say when shit goes to fuck, then they blame the, some spooky spirit force called the devil. But the point being is, if they understood that their power and energy, that they fuel the intent with that, it's really them giving the power that brings that makes that belief a reality, not the non-existent fact of it. Meaning, all right, there's a God that resides in the sky. They believe that there's a God and there's a heaven. What gives life and energy to that is their belief that that's a reality and it exists. Now, here's the deep thing. It's a reality and it exists in them in their own subjective realm, their own personal world. It's not a reality to us because we don't deal with a spook God. We don't deal with a mystery God. We don't deal with something that can't be confirmed or proven. So it's not a reality to us. So we differentiate how we approach belief than the way they approach belief. And this is where it gets a little bit fucked up and twisted, because if they understood, if they used that same power, because really what's infusing that belief with energy and intent is that individual's personal agathodemon. I mean, they don't understand that concept, but if they stopped giving it power by infusing it with their energy that they believe in it so hard, they'd realize that it's non-existent. And it's hard. Now, as we can discuss that being on this path, it's easy for us to see that. But you got to remember, when you're talking to them, it's not as easy to convey that to them, because it's like, all right, let's look. How many of us know motherfuckers that go to jail and come out and they either become Muslims or they saved or some shit, right? Because when an individual is put in a tough circumstances, they will tend to cling on to something that gives them some type of hope. And there's nothing wrong with that. That can be a beautiful thing. But what it does is just it detracts from the power that the individual really has that lays dormant with them. They give the credit to this external aspect of it, but never give any credit to themselves. Now, if that was used as a focal point to get that person motivated and back on, I got no problem with that. But the problem I have is because you had that personal experience, when you try to force that on somebody else and want them to accept it and then get mad when they don't, that's where it becomes a problem. So hopefully that makes sense. We have to know that when dealing with and talking with religious ass people. That's a good point. And yeah, Anarchy Z also typed in, I don't look at as good versus evil. To me, it's more of a situation of light, dark, and shades of gray. Yeah, and then you could look at it in that point too. Remember, they're just varying degrees of energy, and each individual is going to perceive it differently. Because like I said, we could see a situation or somebody could do something, and one person could perceive that individual's actions as being negative or bad, whereas that same action by another individual who's present might not perceive that same action as good or bad. So it's all about perception and how you perceive the energy, how you the vibration and frequency that you're getting from it. We have to remember, when we go back into the 7 principles of truth, remember it all comes from the same source. We can't separate it. There's no separation from the two. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna skip some of the personal conversation. Yeah, Brother Jack types in, yo, so in essence, there are many paths to the same finish line. Yeah, we're all, in essence, trying to get to the same place. What is that same place? All right, we're all trying to figure out. These are the $1 million questions, plural. Why are we here? How did we get here? You know, what are we supposed to do while we're here? Where are we going after we die? And what happens to us exactly, you know, when we die? Right? These are the $1 million questions. Well, you got some of those answers last night with that ritual. It's personal. You can't really explain that. Remember, people want to always know, well, what happens to you when you die? I read in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or I read. All right. As I said before, the ancestors were always trying to convey spiritual and personal experiences the best way they could describe them in an external aspect. So when you're reading a lot of those texts, reason why you get a lot of that symbology is because that was the best way they could express it. We're asking questions being confound to person, place, or thing, like what happens to us when we die? And we're trying to answer that within the parameters of person, place, and thing, which you can't do. That's the whole point. Anubis, which again, being that bridge, you know, activating and opening that 9th gate, where stands Heru and Set, which represent the two dualistic aspects of your nature, or what we would term good and bad to ourselves. It's that inter-wrestling that we fight within ourselves. Because you know the old saying, you your worst enemy? Well, that's what Set is, the divine God side of yourself. Heru is the conformist side of yourself. So when you get to that 9th gate and Anubis leads you there, he's trying to show you both aspects of your nature. He's trying to show you this is what creates this way of thinking. This is what creates this way of thinking. These are the actions that are a result of that. Now that you know and you're aware, which is the illumination of the Ka and the Ba, the awareness part, that's what's activated. You understand? So now you know, but that personal message, as again for last night, and those that were there, feel free to type in, and hopefully you did when I get later down in the chat. Type in briefly. I mean, you got to get in the depth of your personal, because then we had some personal time in the chamber when we came out. Each individual went in there personally and did their own personal work for a few, for a little bit. The message was clear, but it was different for each individual. But the illumination, and the term illumination is when we say the illuminated ones, right? All right, don't get spooky with Illuminati. Oh, you say, let's not go there. Illuminated or illuminated ones just means somebody who is aware, that has the intellect. So when the Kaaba is illuminated, we are now in a state of awareness. And with that awareness comes responsibility. That's why I said being a god or a goddess is a responsibility. It's not just rehearsing some shit you read in some book. Oh, I'm a god. I'm an original god because the original people, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? That's not what being God is, because you read it in some book and it makes you puff your chest out and puffs your ego up. No. Anubis is one of the key aspects of your psyche that brings you to the realization. But he says, look, all I can say is from what I got out of it and what I saw, it made me come to the realization of what I've been through up to this point in my life. He also showed the road ahead. When I say he, I'm just saying metaphorically. He also showed the road ahead. Like, look, having this awareness is a responsibility, and it's not easy. I keep telling people, getting on this path, people think when you start to be successful on this path, working rituals and, gaining prosperity mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, people think that it tends to get easier. It doesn't. It becomes more difficult in the sense because with that awareness and knowledge comes responsibility. And knowing and being aware, you can't just approach things normally anymore. Part of that responsibility, you can't convert people, but part of that awareness is you have to teach other people. You understand? Not force them and convert them. I'm not talking about that shit. Our job is just to pass this information on. But knowing makes things tough because sometimes you got to make tough decisions. Obstacles become a little more challenging because you might have to approach it differently than you did when you were not aware. So don't fall into that trap thinking this shit gets easier. The beauty of it is, though, is, as I've said several times before, you are now equipped with the tools to deal with adversity when it comes, which brings up the Apep thing that was mentioned there. I'm glad, because I almost forgot that. Apophis or Apep, right? Because you see the Agatha demon has encircled with it Apep. Because when a pep comes, I mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again if you missed it. I mentioned this a couple of times a little while back, a week or two ago. A pep comes to you in the form of your thoughts between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. The Apep energy comes to you when you're laying in your bed sleeping or struggling to fall asleep because you're stressed out with financial problems. You're stressed out with difficulties and hardships going on in your life, personal issues. That's what a pep does. It instills doubt and fear into your mind. And this is why when you read the story symbolically of Ray trying to keep a bet, right? Trying to keep him at bay between the hours of midnight and the sunrise, this is what he spends his whole nights doing. This is symbolic. Ray represents the sun, right? The ram, right? And then you have the only individual who could come and keep a pep at bay, which was Set, right? The power of the Agatho demon, this is why on the left-hand path, we acknowledge Set as the most powerful deity in the sense that it represents the isolated consciousness of the individual. It is Set that one must activate, because even in the rituals last night, there's the invocation of Set, and there's an aspect of Set through the ritual and a closing aspect of Set, because that's why a Papus or a Pep, Set, and the Agatho demon are all intertwined. They're all connected, right? And then you have Anubis, which is connecting or is the gap or the bridge. So there's a whole different way, to look at other than what we see with Anubis on the surface. You understand? So it's all connected, man. You just got to look at it the right way. So yeah, that good point, Jack. Anarchy Zed also typed in, man, this is a rad catch. Wish I have caught it last night. I wish that had been nice. Well, we'll have more. We're gonna have just to throw it out there, we're putting something together to do outside on the beach. I'll give more information on that when we have it more organized. Jurgen Mormon, what's up? Peace, brother, sister. I'm not sure if it's a brother or sister. I think it's a brother. Anarchy Z types, and I practice modern demonology traditionally, but I've been trying to educate ancient Egyptian mystic knowledge lately. Cool. We do, or myself, and I know a lot of us here, we do a lot of personal demonology work. We did a whole section on the Pandemonium Mandela, creating Mandelas, demons of the Black Sun, which really is the Black Sun is representing, which is symbolic of where a lot of those personal demons are created in the subconscious. There's many different, what's the beauty of this path is, there's so many different systems, whether it's Luciferianism, Babylonian magic, vampirism. The beauty of it is, like, vampirism has a lot of connection with the Egyptian left-hand practices. Luciferianism has a lot of connection to vampirism, etc. The beauty of it is there's similarities between all of these systems, but they all do one thing. They all, get us to tap into that isolated consciousness and bring out the divinity within us, bring out that immortality that we have the ability to obtain. So I always encourage people to explore all these paths, and then you decide, and I've said this a million times, there's going to be things that you just don't resonate with. Like, you just, we say, I'm not feeling it. And that's okay. There's going to be other things where you say, I like this. I resonate with it. I'm feeling this. Then you go with that. But the only way you're going to know what's for you and not for you, at least experience and study and dabble to the point where you can make that decision. How can you make a decision on something if you don't have any experience on it? That's how I go about it. Like, if I look into a certain spiritual system, like, the I Ching, a lot of people are into that on this path, the left-hand path aspect of it. I'm just not a big practitioner of it, but I do see some core elements in it. So that's how you figure out what is and what is not for you. But that's the beauty of it. And I've said a million times before, that's one thing that's different about this path than any other path. There's so many different areas you can branch out into and explore, and you're not limited on this path. There's not one particular right way, whether it's personal demonology work, whether it's Luciferianism, vampirism, whether it's the Egyptian Heka, whatever it is, you have that ability as a god on the path or a goddess on the path of self-mastery to explore that. And that's a beautiful thing. All right. Jurgen Mormon, Jogu Suhir from Suriname. Okay. Jaga Su. All right, what's up, brother? Okay. How you been, man? I didn't know that was you. Okay, cool. I know we haven't been catching you on a radio show lately. I know. We've cut it back to every other week. It's been a little bit difficult to do it lately. We might be taking a break from it for a little bit. It's just been tough with a lot going on, but it's good to see you up in here, brother. Appreciate it. Brother AP, who was at the ritual last night, typed in one word for last night: ritual powerful. Yeah, it definitely was. Look, man, the best way I can describe, I like this is just me. We've had some rituals where we've had 15, 20, 25 people. We've had some rituals where we've had 10 to 12 people, 10 to 15 people. Last night, we only had there was 5 people. The sixth person couldn't make it. And it was in an enclosed, smaller type of setting. It was very personalized is the best way I can describe it. And I think when the energy, because it was a bit smaller, and because due to the fact that you could sense everybody's energy there was in sequence, everybody was in the right frame of mind. Man, I just can't, I'm trying to put it into words. It's kind of hard. I know, like Brother AP said, powerful. To me, it was a combination of all of those things. Powerful. There was tranquility. There was peace. There was reflection. It was like being, the best way I can describe it, it was like being in a porthole open, and we were sucked through, and we were in our own little universe for that period of time that we were in there. One thing I got to say was funny. She's probably gonna get mad if I say this. Sister Sonia, who was at the ritual, she got so locked in and zoned out when we were casting the circle. She was like in her own world, going in like, she looked like she was what do you call those things? Those teacups at the amusement park. She was going completely the other way. I bring that up to say it was just a type of energy because everybody's vibe and frequency was in line. It was like synchronized. We were able to just tap in immediately when the ritual began. And that was the beauty of it. And matter of fact, the oil that's created for that ritual was created by Sister Sonia. She created that oil, and it was powerful. And one thing I noticed when we poured the libation oil for Anubis, man, again, I'm trying to explain this the best way. It penetrated through the incense. It's like it went all up into my breathing apparatus, and like it cleared out everything in me. It's the best way I could describe it. But she had put together a whole concoction for that, and it was some good shit. It's the best way I could describe it. So again, when you're having a personal spiritual experience, it's kind of hard to put it into words. So we're trying to describe it the best way we can. Okay. Anyway. All right. So Brother Jack types in isolated consciousness, true power. All right. I'm gonna skip the personal conversation. Yeah. Matthew Watson typed in earlier when we were talking about truth. That is so true. There is truth, and there is truth within the truth. And look, I can't stress that enough. Look, you know that old saying when they say that when somebody tells their side of the story, right? There's two sides to the story, and usually the truth is somewhere in between, right? That's how I look at that statement, and that's usually what it is. Because how many times has an incident taken place, right? Or you watch, or you might have experienced it, or something took place when you were growing up. Could have been an incident in school or in your neighborhood, or something went down or whatever. And you go talk to 2, 3, 4 people about the incident. And isn't it funny how the stories change? Because the more people you go to, they're giving their interpretation on it and how they perceived it. So the question is, which one is the truth? Because all of them were there and all of them saw the same thing. But why are we getting 3, 4 different stories? So that's a good point. There is truth, and then there's truth within the truth. And then Anarchy Z followed it up with, I've heard that before, connecting with the aspect of what is involved, change it to suit you. Yeah, and that would apply on the level of if we're working spiritual rituals, if we're working, we're studying, we're researching, apply it. That's what real truth is. When you come to the self-realization of that truth, that's when it becomes a reality to you. That, to me, is true truth. That's why I was saying in the very beginning that truth is not because it's something written in a book or you heard somebody say something. It's when you confirm it as a reality to you. That's what truth is. You understand? Brother Phil types in, I've had many demons. And I know you have, brother. Less the spirit of God, divine power. That's Anarchy Z. The little meaning was replete with wisdom. Black Tower types in, would the Agatho demon, I assume that's what you meant, I think that's a spelling error, no. The Caco demon be the same as the Agatho demon, even though that this title is from another tradition. Yeah, there's similarities in that. You'll hear the word Agatha demon. You'll hear the term that you have there, the Caco demon. You'll hear, even in the fluffy traditions, you'll hear people call it your guardian angel. You'll also hear it in the African and the African, the Palo traditions as your a specific spirit that controls your head or your ori. It's all the same thing. Yeah, different traditions will have different terminology for it, but all accept or acknowledge the fact that your true essence, the true you, that's what it is. They all are in agreement with that, but they might have different titles that they use to explain that. But when you, for an example, personal demonology, I've always said, when we were talking about the Pandemic Mandela and the demons of the Black Sun and how you create your own personal demons, And when you create your own personal demon, that's the most powerful demon you can create, because that came from your subconscious mind, right? Your personal demon or your agatho demon, you give it shape, you give it form, right? And the Necronomicon gets a little bit into that. By you giving it that shape or form of that essence, you're embodying it with the true aspects of everything that is the real you. That's what makes that powerful. So all of these spiritual systems are in agreement on some shape, form, or fashion with that, regardless of the title they use. In demonology, Anarchy said we have patron or matron demons. Yeah, you'll see that too. Paternal, male or female. Again, depending, and you'll see that in vampiric forces too, working with a lot of the vampiric energy. Again, it's if that's a system one use, all I say is this to an individual. People always ask, what should I or should I not be doing? Whatever you get results from. If it works for you, it's something that resonates with the psyche of your subconscious mind, then utilize it. If it doesn't work for somebody, then it just doesn't work for them. So anytime somebody asks me, and you'll get that a lot from newer people on the path, which is normal, because that's a question you always get from somebody in their early stages. But when I get that question from somebody that's been on the path from a while, it's a little, it's a little surprising to me, because the next question I always follow it up with, well, what is it you do that you get results? They'll say, oh, well, I do this and blah, blah, blah. I do that. That don't really work. Okay, so there's your answer. Wherever you get results from and you see those results and it's making a difference in your life, it's transforming and changing you, stay with it. Now, if you start doing something continuously and it's not working, then maybe you need to change it up. That'll happen too. So again, that's how we have to approach this path. All right. El Sheba Sekmat typed in earlier, greetings, my melanated nation. Anarchy Zeb put the definition. You can go pull that up. He typed in, or he or she typed in the definition. Jack Charles. He typed in a comment about last night's ritual. When we went each direction, my third eye was getting stronger and stronger. Yeah, when we were summoning the four corners. Yeah, that's the power buildup. You just feel this. If the term I could use is rising, I guess you feel this power of energy just rising up within you. Like I felt like if I ran into the wall full speed, I wouldn't have felt anything. I'm just using a metaphor. Hopefully that makes sense. Matthew Watson typed in, hey brother, this may be off topic, but do you know anything about the fox deity Kitsune of Japanese mythology? I don't know much about that, so I will look into it since you brought it to my attention. So I'm not really familiar with that, so I won't really speak on it. And what's a good way to invoke new energies coming to you? The best way, that's a good question. When you're looking at, let's just say, we'll talk about the Egyptian pantheon in this case. The best way to invoke new energies towards you, figure out areas of your life that you need work on, and look for a particular archetype, deific mass, or energy that represents that. Like, let me give you an example. If, for an example, you're trying to increase your knowledge and your wisdom and your intellect, Tahuti would be a good deity for that. Obatala and Ifa pantheon would be a good deity for that. If you're trying to tap into the warrior side of your nature, or say you got, as I mentioned earlier with Sekhmet, you got obstacles in your life, Sekhmet would be a good energy to invoke for that. So long story short, I'm just throwing two quick examples at you. I would look the best, how I would approach that. This is just me. I don't just like to randomly just, try to work with a specific energy just for the fuck of it. You should always do that in accordance to what's going on in your life at that time. What you need or what you're trying to accomplish should dictate and determine what type of energies you should be invoking to you. Because if you're invoking shit to you that you don't really need, that might cause conflicting energies in the sense. It might cause a little confusion going on in your life, because you might be intaking things you don't need, or an overabundance of things that you don't need, or you could just be wasting time because you're not really in need of that. So what the black adept always does is he or she always goes within and always does a critical analysis of themselves, because everybody, we're always changing. We're always evolving in the sense there's always different things going on in our lives. So I would just simply say to you, that should be dictated by what's going on in your life at that time. And it should be constantly changing. You understand? So hopefully that helps you with that. All right. All right, let's see what else we got here. Bear with me. Thing just jumped on me again. Bear with me. This thing jumped on me. I'm trying to find my spot where I left off. Okay, here I found where I was at. All right, Jack Charles typed in, last night ritual made me more introspective about my current affairs. The Anubis energy made me more alert, like a dog with its ears up watching an intruder at the door. That's a good metaphor. And I think everybody had similar experience on some level. And that's why I was saying earlier, you'll find there were similarities in the experience, not maybe exactly the same way, but there were similarities. I had similar to that. I can attest. Black Tower types in Uzit the Cobra as goddess if you want one of the coolest experiences ever. Yeah. And in that same book, Egyptian Gods and Goddesses, there's a whole breakdown on that too, if anybody's interested. And again, that book is by George Hart. Anarchy Z also typed in, I do not currently evoke. I just think of it as disrespectful as opposed to invocation. Okay, and that might be how you approach it. And I can understand that. I look at evoking or evocation as just tapping in and harnessing and embodying the aspect of what the deity or the energy represents. That is used in chaos magic. So if there's anybody that practices chaos magic, you will find that methodology of evocation. But again, if that's how you approach it as an individual, that's fine. And if it works for you, there'll probably be some other people that maybe utilize the evocation and they get results from it. And again, that's fine for them also. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Bear with me for a second. Okay. I'm trying to get through the rest of these questions. I'm going to try my best. I don't know if I'm going to get through all of them, but I'm going to try. All right. Chi types in, greetings, greetings, everyone. Hell late. Man, you're here. The Black Tower. Okay, I'm skipping your personal conversation. Skipped all this stuff. Lips and Froze. That's a pretty cool ass name. I like that. I'm in Los Angeles. Been wanting to be down to you for a while. Well, we appreciate you here. All right, we will. My email is on the description of the page. Somebody could type it in if they know it. Then you could always contact me through the email. Aaron Morgan, what spiritual entities do the Sufis invoke? Now, that just all depends on if you work jinn magic or you work. There's different schools of Sufism. Sufism, in essence, real Sufism, is not so much that they invoke one particular deity. Now, the Assassin Order, they do work with an aspect of black magic. They do, believe in tapping into the divine, or they'll say the divine aspect of the creator. They'll say the creative force of will be another term you'll hear. It depends on the school of Sufism or the spiritual system of Sufism you're studying, because the Sufis, for an example, that exist in Turkey and Persia, and there's even I can't remember the name of them. I was just doing some research on it was a very small group that existed in what's known as Iran today. I can't remember their name, which I found very interesting because they incorporated a lot of spiritual systems into their practice. Even though on the surface they portrayed themselves as Muslims, real Sufism in essence has nothing to do with Islam. They're really trying to tap into the divinity within because they believe that the divine of the creator resides within man. Even when you tap into the Sufi ritualistic practices, the Sufi dances, for an example, they try to obtain higher states of consciousness by way of those dances. They believe that the individual has the ability to tap into that. Now, the assassins, or you're an individual that works with the jinn, right? Now, in the Quran, from an Islamic tradition, they'll tell you, the jinn is evil and it's negative. That's just your perspective on it. The assassins didn't look at it like that. We had a whole ritual, and I know there's people in here, a couple that were there. We have a whole ritual based on that called the ritual of chaos and darkness. And it kind of teaches you those principles. And it goes back to those ancient assassin orders that kind of incorporated Sufism with what we would term black magical practices today, because they used sorcery. There was orders that did that. Then there was some that were a little bit more religious, the modern day ones that were more influenced by Islam. And believe it or not, in some circles, a lot of strict Islamic societies, they don't accept Sufism because they don't believe you can be a true Muslim if you're a Sufi, which I find that ridiculous. But the Sufis were kind of trying to tap into a wide range of elementals of deity, per se. So it would really depend, because again, I'm going to find, I don't have it with me now. I'm going to find that, for an example, that small group that existed for a period of time in Iran, they incorporated a lot of spiritual traditions in their specific school of thought of Sufism. So it just kind of depends on what spiritual school of Sufism you're working with. Let's see. Lips and Froze, I'm staying on this live to address me. I'm in Los Angeles, waiting to hear from you. Yeah, Lips and Froze, send me an email. The best way to contact me is khnum19@gmail.com, and we can communicate through there, start through there. Anarchy Z also typed in, I heard of the Catechism. Yeah, I mean, get it. It's a thick ass book. I have it actually right here. Hold on, let me pull it out. Look, it's a thick ass book. I don't expect somebody to read through the whole thing of it, but it's good to have for reference if you're dealing, with that. But let me show you what the shit kind of looks like. This is it right here. And look how thick this shit is. But this is an A to Z, for an example. If you really want to know what they deal with, as I said earlier in the beginning of the show, they deal with that more than they do the Bible. Just like your Sunni Orthodox Muslims, they deal more with the Sunnah or the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad than they do the Quran. And that's where the disconnect is, because the sad thing is this. Islam, obviously, since the early 90s, when terrorist attacks escalated, everybody assumes that everybody that's a Muslim is a terrorist, and that's just not true. And I'm not sticking up for the ones that are fanatical terrorists, because there are some fundamentalist Islamic terrorists that hide behind that religion, and the shit that they advocate is nowhere in the Quran. If anybody has read the Quran, you will know that half of the shit that they advocate is not in the Quran if you really read the Quran, which unfortunately gives those Muslims, whether you agree with Islam or not, those quote unquote peaceful practicing Muslims, which I always get into the argument with them with the word Muslim. Musalam means one of peace, not one who submits. They're wrong from that on the get-go, but that's a whole nother story. But the thing being is, not everybody that practices Islam is a terrorist. But unfortunately, with everything that's going on in the world with terrorism, it comes with the territory now, so to say. But that's because a lot of those fanatics and fundamentalists, they're following those sunnas and traditions that were written by men. They're not really following the so-called written Quran that they claim was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. So you got to know the difference. Now, it's important to know this history. And in the first section of the class, and again, I emailed people the information today on the classes. If you didn't get it, send me an email. I think I covered everybody on the list. If you didn't get it, send me an email. I'll send you the email. We will go over all this in the very first section. Okay? We will go over all of this. So it's important for us to know this because a lot of this is still kind of jumbled in our brains. We think we're past it, but you're going to realize when we go through it, there's some of it that still is questionable and is back there. But yeah, again, not to stay on that too long. Let me see if I get through the rest of this stuff and wrap this up. All right. Okay, I heard of it. Okay, I went over that. Empiric, you're right. That was in reference to the Catholic Mass. All right. Lips and Fro, I just started female blood magic. I have questions for you. Okay, again, send me the email and we'll go from there. KHNUM19@gmail.com. And in the description, if you've noticed, so everybody knows, I put the email address there now. So you'll see it on the outside of the description box. Yeah, oh, this is an interesting comment. Black Tower types, and the best advice I ever got from an actual priest was, it doesn't matter what you believe, only that you believe. I ran crazy with that ever since, choosing for myself what I want to. Yeah, and that sounds similar to the priest that I was talking about earlier. He was on that type of vibe, you know. Look, at the end of the day, the reality is even in those groups and organizations, there's those that don't, there's those that know. Don't think that all of them are asleep. They're not. And I found that out. And the only way you find that out is, you know, you can learn something from everybody, dialogue with them, talk with them. And you never know who you might run into. You know, I mean, there was one, I'm going to go, that's going back to, I'm going to say 2002. There was another one, 2001, actually, around the same time. For whatever era at that time that I was running into them at that time. So yeah, they do know. Don't think some of them don't know. And don't think that you might not be able to pick up a jewel from them. See, we think that, oh, you know, just because they're into that, we can't learn nothing from them. That's not how you should ever approach anything on this path. You understand what I'm saying? So that's good that you got something out of it. And the power of it is you're able to still carry it with you today. But here's the beauty of it. You utilized it and used that concept and transformed it in your own way, your own methodology, where you've created, you know, things from that have, like you say, you ran with it. I'm sure you've applied it into a multitude of situations. Okay. Because you used the term, then choosing for myself what I wanted to do. That would be another form of being on the path to self-mastery. An individual that's on the path to self-mastery is able to create their own things for themselves that work for themselves. You understand? All right. And then Lips and Froze typed in, hoping we talk. I respect your viewpoints. Looking forward to your response. Yeah, like I say, send me the email and we'll go from there. Anarchy Z typed in, like, honestly, great point that I met. Not sure what that was in reference to. If so many people believe it, is its existence relative? And again, that's going to depend on the individual. It's how that person's going to perceive it. I mean, I just kind of thought about the Salem witch trials. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. You know, getting into that whole time period. Black Tower types in, that which is found under the law is bound to it according to the Old Testament. So I would think it is irrelevant only to them. Yeah, well, you got to remember that there's a quote, and I can't remember where it is. It's in the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. And I think it's in Deuteronomy. I'll find it. But that it was added in by King James himself. There's a quote that says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." That is not in the original text. That was inserted in those texts during the times of the Crusades and the witch hunts, which gave the Catholic Church and the Crusaders justification to hunt down those that were practicing witchcraft. If you do your history and research, you'll see that. It is not in the original text. It is in the first 5 books of the Old Testament. I just can't recall offhand. I'll find the quote and remind me, and I'll get you the exact book, chapter, and verse. But that was inserted when King James and all those got together and decided to compromise what translations of the Bible they were going to use in the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. When they all came together and decided what books they wanted to leave out, what books they wanted to leave in, and when they did their original translations, they added and took things out. They inserted that. That was done intentionally to justify them going on a witch hunt. So those people that were fanatical and literally believed in, especially the law of the Bible at that time, or the Torah, that's the type of shit they were on, man, unfortunately. All right. Brother Phil Upland types in, funny how that God lets so many believers down. Prayers not or never answer, whether big or small. True indeed. Oh, and here's a good point you bring up, Matthew Watson. Then I guess all these superheroes and shit must be thought forms too. I remember when I was a kid, I thought Superman, Wonder Woman. Hell, I still remember dreams I used to have about them. Well, thinking about it, a superhero can be an archetype, right? What's really the difference? You can actually use superheroes in ritualistic work if you decided to, because each superhero has a superpower, right? That represents a certain aspect of them, which you could possibly connect to a certain aspect of yourself. So really, how does that differ? And now the thing is, Marvel and the writers of Marvel that create these superheroes, they created them. They thought about it on the mental or the subjective, and they bring it into the objective. They drew up the character, they gave it an image, they gave it a likeness, and they brought it to the screen, and in a sense, made it real. So there's magic in that in itself. Shit, Walt Disney's a fucking genius, because to this day, he still got people stepping into his subjective realm and paying money to view it. Because all that shit Walt Disney created, people to this day still flock there. That is a ritual in itself, and that is a powerful ritual, because there's people that go regularly that are fascinated by Disney, and they keep. All right, I know. Modern day, they keep adding to it, but when you look at the essence of what Walt Disney created in the beginning, he basically created this. It don't look. You can get into all of the that's all fiction, and that you can get into the whole black and white thing of it if you want. I'm not talking about that. But what he did was something he created in his subjective realm. He bring it into a reality on an objective realm. And if you don't think so, anybody that goes to Disney and pays admission to go in and participate, you are confirming that reality. So you don't look at the shit like that, though. That is a reality. And Walt Disney, however you perceive it, is irrelevant. That's basically what he did. I'm bringing that up because of the superhero comment. The superheroes too. How many people are big Marvel fans? Because there's something about the superhero characters that captivate their emotions, right? Don't get me on the Black Panther thing. That's a whole nother thing. That was a whole. I don't want to get into that shit right now. But I'm just saying, superheroes in general, they can be worked with as archetypes, because the archetype is as real as you make it. Don't worry about what it was created externally to represent, because it's an outer reflection of what exists within you. You're supposed to be able to connect to that power, that energy, and that consciousness that resides within you. Not focused on the external, literal aspect of it. Is it real or not? See, that's where we get fucked up arguing biblical shit and trying to validate the literal reality and existence of these things. We get fucked up with that because a lot of it can't be proven. You understand? And a lot of it was grafted from things that preceded it. But that's a good point with the superheroes, though. Anarchy Z typed in, man, I'm trying to finish these. I hope I can get through all these. I just find the whole story of Jesus a cop out. I agree. When something tragic happens, like they use the well, Lord works in me. I hate, man, listen, you can go back and look. It's not a foundation. It's an excuse. I've said on multiple videos, that's the one phrase that just makes my skin cringe when I hear the Lord works in mysterious ways. I fucking hate that. And those that know me know I always voice that, because just say you don't fucking know. It's an excuse because you really don't fucking know. Don't sit here and tell me, like, plane crashes. Somebody gets out the plane and survived. Praise the Lord that I survived, right? But the same people that were on that plane died. The same Lord and God killed those same people on that plane. And they'll say, well, the Lord works. What kind of fucked up Lord would work in a mysterious way like that? It is an excuse. It's a crutch. It fucking irritates me. And Phil commented to that, Matt's comment about the serum superheroes, which that's what I was, but they had to be thought forms to the ones who created them. And that's true. That's a reality. And I used the Walt Disney shit. You understand? All right, let me skip through some of these. Right, and Anarchy's Ed types of religion teaches us to be satisfied with not knowing. It's pure faith and belief. And when you're operating just on faith and belief only, and you're not dealing with any facts, you're not dealing with anything that can be confirmed, you're able to be a mentally indoctrinated slave. And you're a ripe candidate for rules and restrictions. And then I can captivate your emotions by way of fear. Because religion is based on the precept, if you're good and you follow all the rules and regulations, you're going to this place called heaven and everything will work out for you. And then they lie to you and tell you have free will. But if you exercise that free will against the rules and regulations of the religion, which really in essence isn't free will, then you're going to this place called hell where you're going to burn eternally. And here's the even deeper part. They can't even prove that neither exist. So religion is predicated off the emotion fear. If I can instill fear in your heart and in your mind, I can control the way you think. I can predict the way you're going to move before you move, because you're going to move based on your reaction to that fear. And that's why they use it so effectively. You understand? And Anarchy's Head also types in left-hand path work has taught me to respect or at least acknowledge other gods. That's true. I mean, essentially you can call what I have as faith, but yeah, but again, remember what I said earlier, there's a difference between personal faith based on things you created in your subjective, as opposed to people having blind faith through religion and faith and belief. We have to have, we all have faith in the things that we're doing, but that faith is confirmed by the results. So that's why I said earlier, if you're getting the results, that's the difference, quote unquote, faith when we use it from I'm just using a perspective of it on this path. It's not the same type of faith of how a religious person would. So you can call it what you want. It's irrelevant. Okay. But yeah, this is a good point. But after saying that, Anarchy says that. But I also think of those light and dark forces as the demons and gods that are attributes of the forces of nature. Yes, there is a connection to nature, which also, remember, the microcosm, macrocosm, nature, and also how does that also tie within ourselves? Remember, it's an inward journey out, not an outward journey in. And the problem with a lot of those right-hand path philosophies and spiritual systems, they start externally out. They're always teaching you to look for God and the creator, and they're always teaching you to look for answers and solutions for your problems outside of yourself. That's why the shit don't work. Whereas this path, it's reverse. So you got to start within, and how does that all connect? And yes, there's that connection with nature. There's that connection, on a spiritual level, but we have to figure that out. You understand? All right. Lisa Carruthers types in, that's right. We have to put the work in. Thank you for the knowledge. Well, we thank you for listening, Lisa. Okay, that's a personal comment. I'll leave that. Brother Phil Tyson, to some, science is religion as well. True indeed. Jada Starcy, right on. I'm kind of go through some of these quick because I got to wrap this up. This is a good comment by Anarchy's Head. I'm just going to read it real quick. More or less, I think of what is described as a demon of God as a flow of energy which can be tapped into with enough practice and knowledge. That's an excellent way to look at it. And I look at that very similar. As long as you take that spookism out of it, you're going to get results. All right. Lips and froze. Typed in, my connection broke for 2 minutes. I'm back. Okay. Jagasu. Peace, brother. Jack Charles typed in, a certain part of the ritual where we embody is said the influx of thoughts you receive were to utilize my highest intelligence at times. Yep. El Sheba Sekmet. Anubis, that's my road dog. That NG got me changed up. If you know what I mean, I do. Jagasu said, I'm peace. Good to hear you good, brother. Sister Sonia typed in last night. The energy was right in capital letters, no doubt. Yeah, Lips and Froze. Again, send me an email. Again, I'm going through this quick because I got to wrap this up. Matthew Wise, hell 911, a bomb, no plane. We all experienced that. True indeed. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these. Sister Sonia types in, yeah, it's hard for me to put it in words. It was powerful. I felt each energy in a different aspect, a perfect combination of individuals attended. This is not for people who think this is for them. It's not. And we've always said from day one, remember, this path is not for everyone. You either have this instilled within you or you don't. You can't enforce this way of thinking on an individual. They have to raise themselves up to want to change and maybe, because remember, part of the process on this path, as we've always said before, it's going to challenge everything you've been taught up until this point, because a lot of people come on this path and realize a lot of the shit that they were taught prior to knowing what they know now was incorrect. And as long as you have that mindset and you're willing, when we use that term, you have to reprogram the subconscious mind or retaught or reteach yourself everything you've been taught. Because the best way to approach this is come in, with the mindset like I want to just be retaught from scratch. And I'm not saying just by other people, meaning as you start to do research moving forward and study and create rituals, start anew. Don't let past things influence or obstruct you from being able to move forward, because that's where I see a lot of people get stuck. They can't. You understand? All right. All right. Peace to shit. All right. Black Tower type saying, I'm a Sumerian kind of guy, but I started with the Egyptian, especially Set. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you use what aspect of the Sumerian or Babylonian magic you use. Necronomicon, which is powerful. There's a lot of rituals one can adjust and create in there, but there's a connection between the two. So, Black Tower All-Stars, I seriously suggest I suggest Ample for wisdom, Set for will, Anubis for God, and Sekhmet as protector, antagonist. I agree. And that would also, to the earlier question of what energies you should invoke, the ones that you need areas in your life to work with improvement. All right. I work according to what I'm dealing with at the time. Yeah, exactly my point. Yeah, and Anarchy Z also typed into the earlier discussion on evocation. I'm not saying evocation is wrong or does not work. In my head, the way that I perceived my studies and experience was that evocation is basically commanding. Invocation is involved. Yeah, and I have heard that before. No. There are people that have termed it like that. I don't look at it not so much commanding, just like banishing too. People perceive banishing different. I don't really look at banishing like you should never remove any type of energy. I look at banishing as just making that space pure, because all energy can be utilized. It's just knowing how to utilize it. So I know some people can confuse the term for commanding for embodying, because really, what is it in essence you're really commanding? It's something that actually is naturally within you from jump. All you're trying to do is, like, for an example, if it's a specific deity, when I was using the term earlier, you're trying to embody what that deity represents. That's it. Like for an example, in chaos magic, they will get dressed up as that deity. They will use the elementals that are associated with that deity just so they can tap into every aspect or energy of that deity. So yeah, there's different perspectives on that, but that's fine. I mean, if that's the way you approach it and it works, that's all that matters. Yeah, the Black Tower, who is it? Is the cobra on the crown of the pharaoh, for those who aren't. Yeah, you'll see two things. You'll see the cobra and you'll see the vulture on some what they call Namuzas, and then on some dynasties you'll just see the cobra. So that's all going to be dependent. It also identified what nome or triad that those individuals affiliated with. The cobra deity and the vulture deity. You'll see sometimes them both, and then sometimes, like you say, you'll just see the cobra deity. And we're going to go over a lot of that in the Egyptian studies part of the classes online. Nekibet is the vulture god. There you go. The Black Tower. Iblis, the black flame of isolated being. Yes, Iblis is the rebellious one. Iblis is actually an Arabic word. And you see Iblis all throughout the Holy Quran. And Iblis means to rebel. It has root in the word rebellious, which again would be no different than in the Greek, Satanas, or Satan, the adversary, right? One who is adverse or goes against the norm. In Arabic, it's Iblis, one who rebels, meaning is not a conformist. So again, different cultures just had different titles that they use. That's all. It's connected, though. I was always fascinated, JR, to start saying with ninja mythology when I was a kid. I even bought the whole ninja costume with the Chinese stars and the nunchucks. And I remember as kids, we'd run around our neighborhood, you know, we would even go to Manhattan and see the karate movies and then beat the shit out of each other coming out of the karate movies. I think all of us at that time. And then I remember at that time, Channel 5 in New York had the drive-in theater every Saturday where they used to show all the martial arts movies, all that shit, man. I remember it was a period of time I was infatuated with that shit. My bad, people. Everyone pays Black Tower types, and everyone pays attention to the river, but the tributaries are what feed the land. Yes, fancy way of saying the lesser upholds the greater. Or God told me to tell you, lo. That's true. All right, I'm gonna kind of leave it there. Okay, so the Black Tower, Necronomicon, bro, 23 years. Yeah, actually, I don't look. Speaking of that, and that's an individual. I had this whole thing here. I don't know if you do work with the Kulit. This is all the works of H.P. Lovecraft. I have the Necronomicon in there too, which is some powerful shit. And there's another example of an individual that tapped into the subjective aspect of his subconscious mind and made it a reality. And in the left-hand path, for an example, and just to finish with this, which is utilized in a lot of spiritual systems. Okay. What page was that on? Nightla Hotep. No, that's not what I was looking for. Where is it? I just had it. I think it's in this book. Hold up. Let's see if I find it here. Well, anyway, in here, I believe, it is in here actually. The Call of Cthulhu, right? Which is used in a lot of left-hand path practices. This is all of H.P. Lovecraft's works. And actually, Barnes & Noble put this out a few years back. If you can get your hands on this, you could create rituals just out of this itself. And then obviously the Necronomicon, which is his most popular works. But H.P. Lovecraft is a big, writer in the left-hand path community where people have utilized a lot of his works to create rituals. There's been workings on the Call of Cthulhu. I mean, I've done myself. But a lot of good shit in there. And there's another, when an individual can leave their mark and impression, that's how they've created. It's the same thing look at it this way. It's the same thing. What H.P. Lovecraft did is what the religious people or the religious people that created these religions did. And we're able to get millions of people to this day to still follow him. But this is a different aspect of it. This is somebody that went the whole other route. So this look, man, the power of the subjective, the best thing I can tell you, it's a powerful tool. That's right. And that's a good point, Black Tower. Cthulhu, the priest embodies Cthulhu, and that's very similar and becomes that being. That's in the Vampire Magic book from Father Sebastian, that's the concept in the very beginning. That's one of the concepts of vampirism. That very concept alone. And that's the priest symbolizes that. You understand? Yes. Now, and I actually, yeah. I mean, similar, because there's that connection and similarities with archetype energy of Belial and Anubis. Yes. So, to an extent, I would say yes. I have to some extent. All right. I think we're gonna wrap it up there, but real quick before we go, I realize we've been on this long. Again, I did send people the email. I know people have been emailing me for the last 2-3 weeks. All the information I sent out today to people on that list for the classes. Okay. If you did not get the email, just send me an email. I'll get it out to you. I think I covered everybody that sent me an email. Again, I might have missed somebody. It is possible. If I missed you, it wasn't intentional. Just send me an email, and I will get at you with that information. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate all the feedback. I love when you guys give feedback, man. And it's good that you guys share your experiences so other people can see them, compare them to their experiences. And again, the beauty and the beautiful thing about this path is I love to see everybody has a different experience, but yet there's so many similarities, but it's not quite the same. And that's the beautiful thing. So it's good that we have this dialogue, and it's good we're able to all, hopefully everybody learns from each other, not just from listening to me talk. It's good to see you guys dialoguing, in the chat, and you're also learning from each other and utilize each other's experiences, not to copy them, but to motivate you to have your own. You understand? All right, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, if you need to get at me, the email is in the description box. It's khnum19@gmail.com. All right, peace. We'll talk soon.